This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, and welcome to the Dream Power Show on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International. I'm your host, certified dream life coach, Debbie Spector-Weissman. This is the show where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to create a life you love. And as a reminder, I am here to help you understand your dreams. So if you've got a dream that's got you stumped, email me at debbie@dreampowerradio.com. I can help you interpret your dream or even help you answer any questions you may have about dreams. So again, you can always email me at debbie@dreampowerradio.com. One of the things I love about dream work is that dreams are, for me, one of the quickest tools for self-discovery. Linda Mastrangelo, my guest today, also believes that dreams have a remarkable potential as good medicine, and she's developed techniques to empower people to make dramatic and meaningful changes in their lives. Let me tell you a little bit about Linda. She's a psychotherapist, author, and educator who's done award-winning research on using dreams as a therapeutic model. Her work has appeared in numerous publications, including the books Sleep Monsters and Superheroes and Dreams That Change Our Lives. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Linda.
Hi, Debbie. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So, Linda, when did you first discover the power of dreams?
Oh my gosh. We'd have to go way, way back, Debbie. I would say I had a pretty prolific dream life growing up. It was one of those things where I would have, I guess you could say I would have what we would call hypnagogic type dreams. So these are dreams that happen in the in-between state of sleep and awake. And many of my dreams I really didn't have a context for, and I didn't know what they meant, but I knew they were important. I knew that it was important to honor and recognize them. So I kept a journal for many years, and I'm really grateful for that because now I have this incredible archive of dreams that I can look back on and use, and it really has informed the way I work with dreams, particularly with dream mapping. So yeah, it started at a very young age, and it was something that I felt was deeply personal. It was more of a spiritual practice, if that makes sense. Yes, so it started very young.
Okay, you talked just now about dream mapping. What do you mean by that?
Yes. So when we can archive our dreams, meaning if we can keep a series of dreams, what often happens is that we can discover patterns, we can discover links between dreams. In many cases, we can also start understanding the different nuances between symbols that often show up in our dreams that might be repeating. I always see dreams too as precognitive in their nature, that often the dreams that we may have written have later come to pass. And so what's been fascinating is finding, through the years, quite a few of these types of dreams. And I think that many of us don't realize that because we don't often record so regularly, if at all. So when we can do that, there's remarkable discoveries we can find when we have these dream journals that we can look at. So dream mapping also can give us our personal myths. We can work with past, present and possible futures. This is what I do with my clients. So there's a lot of richness that can go with this practice.
Okay, you just mentioned that you actually are a practicing psychotherapist. So how do you use dreams with your clients?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, in so many ways. Particularly, so my specialty is grief and loss. And what I've found with my clients who are in a deep grieving process, their dreams often reflect where they are in their grief. And this is an extremely helpful tool because we can then go right to where the client is in their grief, and then we can work through that together. Often clients may not have that awareness, but their dreams certainly do. And so their dreams will often give us that map of where they are in their grief journey. Another thing I do with clients around grief is very common would be having what we call visitation dreams. So these are dreams of the person that has passed, and often these dreams can be quite profound and life-changing for them. Unfortunately, in our culture, we don't honor dreams, let alone these kinds of dreams. So often my clients don't have a safe place to share these sacred dreams. So it's really quite a wonderful process when we can bring that into the room and share in a very deep, sacred way, because these dreams are I see them as very sacred, and they feel that they have a safe place to explore what these dreams not only have, the personal meaning they have, but also oftentimes there are messages that come in. Their loved ones will bring some messages. And sometimes those visitation dreams can be quite cryptic too. They may need some support understanding what the messages are. And so that's where I come in to help guide and unpack what the dreams could be revealing.
When people first come to you with visitation dreams like that, are they scared by them?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens?
Great question.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. And, sometimes we are scared of things we just don't understand. And especially if we don't have context for what these dreams might be bringing. And of course, depending on how we were raised, our belief systems, for some it could feel very natural, and for others it can kind of rock their world because they've never experienced anything like that. And I see those moments as pretty amazing in terms of how, at least from what I've witnessed with clients, that it actually changes everything. It can shift their consciousness so profoundly. So often the fear is more of the unknown. And once we can work with the dream and really sit with it, and I follow their lead, of course, and I don't insert my own beliefs into it. I allow them to discover what the dream means to them, and often with that process, there's a shift in that as well. So the fear turns into wonder, and often profound changes can happen. And I think for me, this work, doing this work for years, I've noticed that the grief process in and of itself is very initiatory. That grief, when we can hold it in this way, can be transformative, can be life-changing, and certainly visitation dreams are a way to do that.
Okay, without naming any names, can you give me an example of somebody who had a visitation dream and how you helped them work through it?
Ooh, sure. Okay, let's see. There's so many. Well, so I also do group work, and I often I will bring in letting people know that this is my specialty, and if they ever have a dream of the one they lost, to please, come and bring it in. So so I was seeing this group of people for a while in their working with their grief, and one client in particular was very he was very like, oh, I've never had a dream, I don't really dream. And through our year time together, they were transitioning out of the grief group. They were like, okay, I think I'm okay. And then that night they had a visitation dream, and it was one of the most profound dreams, because it was the message was, because this person had been feeling tremendous guilt towards the end of this person's life, felt that they could have done more, they could have spoke up, or there's a lot of things that happen when we are witnessing our loved one transitioning. There's a lot of emotion, it's highly charged, it's very high stakes. So often people come out of that experience traumatized, because they're witnessing not only their loved ones transitioning, but there's also this feeling of helplessness, right? That they wish they could have done more. They wish they could have been more, woulda, coulda, shouldas, right? Towards that end. And so this dream completely shifted that for him, because he, coming into this, he was like, what, I wish I could have done more, and kind of holding on to the guilt. And then the dream was like, you did everything, there was nothing you could have done differently. And it was that clear, and it was that remarkable. So the fact that this person was able to come in to the group, share the dream, so there was witnessing, but you could also see visibly the calm and peace that came with that dream, and the sharing and the holding of it was so profound and sacred that it just so happened to be that was the final day that they were going to be in group. So even the timing of it was impeccable. So there was a lot going on. There was a lot of work happening behind the scenes with that particular visitation dream. It was kind of leading up to that moment. And
so when you're working with people going through the grieving process, are all the dreams they have visitation dreams, or are there other kinds of dreams that also appear?
Excellent question. So I would say both. So there's certainly the visitation dreams, and that has its own quality to it. A visitation dream often happens in that, what I was talking about earlier, the hypnagogic. This is the in-between state, when we're coming out of sleep. So from deep sleep, and that when we go out of that cycle of sleep and into waking, we call that a hypnopompic state. And often in this state, many people have reported having visitation dreams where they felt that the presence of their loved one, and the dream is quite vivid. It's different in quality. Sometimes the person feels like they're in the room with them. Sometimes it's more in the dream time, but there is a very different quality to that kind of dream. With grief dreams, it's different. Sometimes they can be nightmarish, because when we are experiencing death of our loved ones, whether it's sudden or a prolonged illness, there can be quite a lot of trauma to work through, and the dreams will often reflect that particular trauma. So let's say you watched your loved one who was in that final hours of the transition, and they often have what's called a death rattle, or a hard time to breathing. I've had clients who had shared nightmares about their loved ones gasping for breath, either like having something cover their mouth, or something that reflected that panic of watching that. So that's helpful for us because then we can explore how that time was for them, and then that way, since the dream is telling us this is what needs to be worked on, right? Then we can go into that place in a very gentle, therapeutic way.
So if somebody is having a dream like this, how do you get them to come to an understanding and get peace from it?
Yes, this is part of the grief work. What the dreams do, the dreams give us the material to work on. So let's say someone came in and was dealing with the trauma of witnessing their loved one transition. So now we know from the dream that this is what the client is struggling with. So then we certainly talk about the dream, and I'll bring my insight around it, that this looks like this is about that time, where you were witnessing what was going on. And this way it gives them an opportunity to share in a more gentle way, because the dream has already given us what is absolutely going on internally with this person. And then I'll give them tools to work with the feelings, because that's usually the big one, right? The trauma. Often with trauma, we have what's called a very narrow view of the incident, right? And often people, when they have that kind of trauma, there's a spinning that happens. They often can't get out of that loop. So many of the tools I use is to help them, work on their anxiety, and by, using either breathing or tapping or doing some kind of self-regulation, self-soothing. I'll often, expand their perspective by showing them, well, there's a lot more that happened in your life with this person, and we look at the trajectory of the life, so we try to expand that, so it's not so narrow. And usually what happens when we're working on the dream, more dreams show up and show the shifts that are happening internally within them, because we're paying attention, because we're tending more mindfully with it. So then I'll get another dream that will show, okay, here's the other part of this, or here's the changes that are going on with that. And that's usually a great indication that they're doing, the work is happening, right? That the dream will say, yeah, you're shifting through that, you're moving through that trauma. And it's really wonderful. So that's where the dream mapping comes in, right? And we start to see the series of dreams, and the dreams will reflect that progression.
I see. Okay, well, we're going to take a short break here. We're talking with dream expert Linda Mastrangelo about grief in dreams. We'll be right back. Want to know more about remembering your dreams and what they mean? Want practical tools to help you really live the life of your dreams? I'm Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. For powerful wisdom you can use, sign up for my newsletter today at dreampowerradio.com. It's free.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, and welcome back to the Dream Power Show. I'm your host, certified dream life coach, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're talking with Linda Mastrangelo about dreams, and right now in particular about dreams and grieving. Linda, a question I have is, do you ever deal with people who are in the stages of death and their dreams that they're having while they're in the dying process?
Oh, wonderful question. So with those kinds of dreams, those are very specific. I haven't personally worked with that, but I do know I did work at hospice, and I was experiencing people's more the grieving clients who are dealing with anticipatory grief, and they would tell me many things about what was going on with their loved one during those transitions. And I would hear many, in fact, many stories involving what people often call hallucinatory experiences, which I find an interesting phrase. But what would often happen is they would say, while, usually in the final days, their loved one would be looking off into the corner of the room and experiencing their loved ones who had passed in the room with them. And this was something that was not abnormal. In fact, there's a lot of now, thankfully, articles and books who really want to normalize those experiences, thank goodness, about many people who are dealing with, when they're in that transition state, who experience those profound things, either their loved one in the room, sometimes depending on their spiritual belief system, they may have a spiritual figure in the room with them. When it comes to dreams, many people have talked about a symbolic type of portal in their dreams. Some people have experienced a door. They're going through a door or a window. They're on one side of the window, and then they're, next thing you know, they're on the other side. In many cases, people have shared dreams when they were transitioning of taking a train, or driving in a car. So some kind of journey that they're about to take a part of. And it's pretty remarkable when we look at these dreams to see how profoundly, certainly symbolic about that, that they're going to this next phase, that they're going on this journey. And these dreams often bring a lot of comfort, a lot of peace for them. Usually this happens in the final days. So, yeah.
Yeah. It interests me because when my mother was in hospice, I was with her, and she would, for several days in a row, just be calling out, Papa, 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 give me candy. And
wow.
This at the time this was happening, I was just beginning to study dream work. So I didn't know how to work with this or anything. And I would talk to her afterwards about it, and because she didn't remember having the dreams or anything, was a bit surprised by it. And the thing that, I found fascinating was that I never knew my grandfather, but she always referred to him as Pop. But in the dream, he was Papa. So I figured that she must have been remembering when she was a very, very little girl. The thing about the dreams for me was, I can't tell you what effect they had on her, but they had a very soothing effect on me, because it made me realize that, when she did pass, she was going to be reunited with her father, who was the love of her life. So it gave me comfort. Hopefully it gave her comfort, but it gave me comfort.
Wow.
And so I've always
Debbie, what a gift.
Yeah, I've always found that whole thing very fascinating, and hoping that more people can get into situations like that where they can have that closure with loved ones before they pass, by helping them understand their dreams. Which leads me to my next question: is that why do you think that our society overall just doesn't honor dreams the way I think we believe they should?
Well, I love what you just shared there, because you're absolutely right. I mean, this is why I do the work that I do, And it's funny because dreams and death are probably the most taboo topics in our culture, right? People don't want to talk about their dreams, and they certainly don't want to talk about death. So it's a double whammy, right? We are unfortunately a culture that tries to remove those things. Usually with dreams, I think many of us have grown up with this, I hear this a lot. Oh, it was just a dream, kind of minimalizing it and not really giving it weight. Often parents do that because they don't want to scare their children. Often, especially if it's a nightmare. But oftentimes it's just because they didn't grow up with dreams and having a dreaming culture. I think it's very rare when I hear people, like when I hear my students, for example, say, hey, I actually talked about dreams when I was, young, and I get very excited because my family certainly didn't, which is ironic because when I started doing dream work more professionally, when I was doing dream studies and trainings and then actually doing the work, my father came up to me and was like, oh, by the way, your great aunt and your great grandmother would do dream interpretation in their village in Italy. Like, he just casually mentioned that. And I was like, what? I was flabbergasted. I was like, I cannot believe, because all my life I'm doing this work, I'm dreaming and I'm having these experiences and no context, no guidance. And then I find out later that actually my ancestors were doing this deep work, and and so that was really interesting. So there was an interesting disconnect with my father when he came to the United States. He didn't pass on that dream culture. Unfortunately, it got left behind in Italy. And so I think that that's also often the case. Many of us come from ancestors that did have a pretty deep dreaming culture, and that many of us are removed from that. Part of the work that I do with clients as well is getting them in touch with their ancient ancestral practices, their dream practices. And that's a really rich, rewarding work when we can tap into our own cultural dreaming. Again, I think what that does is also it normalizes the dream and also encourages our young people that these dreams are a gift, that they can be good medicine, right? That if we again, support, then like you were saying, wouldn't it have been wonderful to have people who could hold that space, especially in hospice, right? To normalize, to hold it and be curious and open about those experiences. I mean, it'd be so healing, wouldn't it? It would just change so much. So yes, I think that it's just a cultural thing that I hope that we all as stream workers can shift, and bring in that excitement and wonder, but also the wisdom of dreams. It would change the world, I think.
Definitely. And I think it's something that you do in your practice. And also, I should add that, you edit the news magazine for the International Association for the Study of Dreams, which also helps disseminate so much knowledge about, not only dream work, but sleep studies and all things that are advancing our knowledge, both, in the scientific way about how dreams are, so that they're not just woo-woo crazy things, they're actually rooted in in science and in our life, in our nature, in our life, which is wonderful. So we're coming to the end of our show. So I just want to ask you, how can people find out more about you and your work?
Great, thank you. So as you said, I'm part of the International Association for the Study of Dreams. I sit on the board there, as well as the editor of the Dream News. I'm also part of the continuing education there. So a lot of what you're talking about, so part of my work is to bring dreams in the continuing education, the CEs, for people who are therapists and psychologists who want to bring dreams into their practice. It's one of my passions, is to train and get people who are doing healing work to bring in these tools. I also, so I'm a therapist at the Bay Area, in the Bay Area, and my website is Lightning Tree Therapy. That came from a dream. So that's the lightningtreetherapy.com is my information.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for being on our show today. We've been speaking with dream expert Linda Mastrangelo all about dreams on the Dream Power Show. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International.